falta para llegar? ¿Cuánto tiempo tiene que pasar?
Welcome to the Cult of Pedagogy. In this episode, we will be interviewing a very special kind of educator, our high school librarian, Sylmarí Burgos Ramírez. Sylmarí, let's start from the beginning. What exactly led you to becoming a librarian? Tell us a little bit about your foundational background, your hometown, your family, your schooling, anything that you believe influenced this path in your life.
My story is kind of funny because I was very fortunate that my mom always, since we were kids, make us read a lot. She wasn't like a storyteller, but one of the things that I remember that she did for us is she got me the whole Disney books with the cassettes. Oh. And she got them in English. She's like, you're going to learn English. I don't know English, but you're going to learn English. And you're going to listen from people for the accents. So she would make me like read during the night with my headphones on. So I guess since I was a little kid, I did become like a huge reader. I love the way like reading takes you out of like reality a little bit. It can ease a lot of stress. So in that sense, when I started school, I did visit the libraries in there, but I guess it's not until I'm in high school where, you know, being a teenager, we get a little crazy. And at one time I went out to lunch with my classmates, and that school didn't allow you to get out of the school, but we did it anyway. So, of course, I got suspended. We all got suspended. And the resolution for my dad, he's like, I don't do anything without suspension. That's not teaching her any lesson. And he talked to the principal to make me do community hours in the library for the rest of the high school.
Okay, so the rest of the high school means...
I was a junior.
So you were in your third year of high school, and this was what year? 19?
Wow, 2008.
2008, okay.
2008.
So a lot is going on in the world at that time.
Yes. The librarian at that time, she was a very old lady. It was, of course, little silence kind of library. But that was not the reality in the school, like outside of that environment, because I studied in a fine arts school. So we had theater, we had dance, we had...
Central?
No, this is Pablo Casals in Bayamón. Okay. Oh, so I was the first
graduating class.
Yes, of that school. So it was a whole like new school for Bayamón. I was in visual arts, but I've always had like this huge interest with music. And at that time, we didn't have a music department at all or a classroom. And I started talking to my friends, and I was like, hey, the library is a good space to rehearse. I'm going to see, because I'm doing community service there. Maybe I can talk about it with the librarian. And I don't know from where I got this idea of doing a music session in the library while we had like a book exhibition. And suddenly the library became like famous in the school because we did like a music session. And from there, I'm kind of like liking this. Like I have books. The librarian at that time like let me like do my artistic stuff in the library. So when I graduated, I went to University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras. And during that first year, again, I got super fortunate of getting a job as a library assistant, being a student. So I used to work in the library in the general building, and it was very interesting because I kind of like noticed the difference between what my school library used to be and the libraries in the universities. They were full. Academic libraries are full of people like studying, like doing research. So I had a lot of work. And I stayed there, I think, for my whole 4 years in my bachelor. And I think it was on my last year that the librarian, she was like, have you ever thought about studying librarianship? And I was like, oh, do you have to study for that? Because it was, a sense of ignorance. I didn't know that you had to.
So what was your undergrad degree in?
Sociology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I guess from that side, I get like my humanistic kind of like part and some of my views. But she was like, I think it would be great. You have a really good relationship with patrons coming in. You're very like service oriented. You like to find solutions to everything. And I think this would be like a good option. At that time, I was considering law school. But I had my own like issues with law, the whole like, I don't know if I would like to defend someone that, maybe if librarianship is a field indeed, maybe I should like check it out. So I did, and I went into the graduate school in the University of Puerto Rico called Information Science and Technology. That's actually the name of the degree. It's not librarianship. So my first year in the graduate school, I started working in another library in UPR too, but this was like a specialized library for people that were studying librarianship. So they were all books about like reader's advisory, how to do reference, and it was this whole like new world of understanding how information connects people and how do people connect, or how can they get that access to this world of knowledge. And
aside from books.
Yes, exactly.
So,
aside
including
from
books.
I feel like even today in 2022, there's this notion that libraries need to have books inside. No, librarians do like a bunch of different jobs because it's all about like understanding how information works. How does information travel from one place to another? How does it change? And I did develop this, interest in what we called in our field information behavior. And it's specifically how people, what is their behavior when they are trying to find information? What is their thought process? I did a lot of research in that. And one of the things that I noticed for specific the Latino culture, it's that our first place of information is our family. It's not looking in the internet. It's not books. It's asking mom. It's asking a cousin. It's asking someone in our close group. From there, I was like, that makes me think then why maybe here in Puerto Rico libraries are not that famous. And sometimes it can be because people are so used to asking someone else that we don't have that process of like going to a place to get that information. I feel like that's kind of like about it. In my beginnings, in my second year in the graduate school, the director of the school at that time came to me and he's like, hey, there's this open position in St. John's as a library assistant. In that program at that time, I was the youngest doing the master's, and I was the person that managed English better than the rest. This is a school that it's like full in English. You should try it out. I remember it was like $10 an hour.
Okay, tell me what year?
This is 2014.
Okay.
So for me, that was like a lot of money. I was like,
right.
$10. Like I was getting paid in the UPR $7, I think it was. So I was like, oh my God, like I want to try it out. And that's how I ended up here. And yes, like it's been crazy. After that, I moved to the States.
So you were here from 2014 to
2016.
Okay, so 2 full years.
So 1 year as a library assistant, 1 as a librarian. Then I left to the States because maybe there's so much more to librarianship than just what we know right now. I was super happy of being in this library, but because it's a beautiful library. And if you compare this library to the rest of libraries in Puerto Rico, I'm going to say we have the best library because we do in terms of facilities, services, the place, the community. But I was probably like 23, 24 at that time. I had like this whole like curiosity. You know what? Now I have the money, I have the knowledge. I want to try and see what libraries look like in the States. And I ended up in Boston first for 2 years. I worked there in public libraries, which is another world.
So you went there initially to find additional work in the field, or did you go also to study?
In the beginning was to study. I applied to Simmons University. First, I wanted to get a PhD. And when I wrote the whole like interest letter for the program, I was like, I want to become a director. I want to direct a library. That's like my goal. And I remember they were like, we will accept you in this program and everything, but you don't need a PhD to be a director. They were like very clear on that. But because how things work in Puerto Rico, all of the librarians there have PhDs.
Right.
So I was like, then I need one to,
Right.
be there. So I went into Simmons University. They had at that time, it was like the 6th program in the States in terms of information sciences and librarianship. And I have to say, like, it was crazy, all of the new things that I learned from being in that program, especially because we grew up in this island. We don't think a lot about equity and race relationship. And in the States, they're very up to date on that. So one of my first classes, it was information services for diverse users and underserved communities. And oh my God, like this is another side of me. Like I love helping people. That's
right.
something
This is
that
your sociology background.
I love. And in the university, I did a lot of volunteering, like teaching computer classes to elderly communities in Rio Piedras. And it's something that I've always enjoyed, like seeing that smile at the end that they were able to learn something. And okay, maybe more than being a director, I want to design a program in a library to serve these particular communities. I started working with the Brookline Public Library, a very wealthy community in Boston. All of the employees were white. They were only one Black employee and me, who was the only Latina in the job. But it was super cool to exchange ideas with them. They had a lot of other like knowledge. And I am very presenta. I don't know how to translate that in
You're very straightforward.
So when I was there, I was like, you know what? Even though my position was as a reference librarian, I've never done that before, other than providing the regular reference. But in that position, it was only reference. So I did virtual reference, reference on the phone, and in-person reference. So you had other librarians working on programs. I was only working on reference, and I was like doing a part-time job over there while I was studying. And I started to get into all of the committees in the library and be like, I really want to learn more about like children's and young adults. I used to work with young adults. So I guess that they were amazing with me because they were like, I mean, if you want to do like extra work, sure, go for it. But for me, it was a learning opportunity all the time. And it was during one of my favorite conferences, American Library Association annual conference, that I visited Denver, and I fell in love with the Denver Public Library. And a lot of my coworkers were always telling me that I should like move into a larger branch library because I used to work, our library was only 3 branches. Denver is 28 right now.
Wow.
And they were like, I think it would be so much like better in a huge system because you're like very like innovative, like you like to do like new things all the time. And usually smaller libraries, it's harder to get up to date. And during the conference, they were the Denver Public Library was presenting on this amazing program called the Plaza Program, which is a library program for immigrants and refugees. And I fell in love And I was like, I want to work here. And I ended up working there. And it was an amazing. I love Colorado too. And I guess I ended up moving back to Puerto Rico more because of family than other things.
Did you get your German Shepherds there, or did you?
Yes, Athena, the little one.
Okay.
The little one. I guess when you move, you need something that reminds you of home.
Right.
And she was an amazing therapy dog for me because that first winter, I've never, like before moving, I've never seen snow in my life. People got very depressed over winter and they don't get out of their houses. They don't do anything outdoors. And I knew that was going to be an issue for me because I'm always hanging out and outside doing stuff. So having my dog there was a huge help because I had to take her out, right, to go exercise. So she got me moving during those times. And also like people, because I had a dog, they would be like, oh, we're going to visit you, like spend time with your dog. And I was like, great, I'm going to cook. And I hate cooking. But during Christmas, it's like,
was your way to connect?
Yes. And it's like, you know what? I don't have a lot of Puerto Rican friends here. I'm going to cook the Puerto Rican food, so they will not judge it. Right. They're not going to know if it's good or bad. So
do they have sobrecitos de sazón Goya in Denver?
No.
You had to improvise el sofrito.
I had to improvise a lot. My mom was great sending me these care packages. Yes, she did it almost every month. And I was like, Mom, sometimes she was like salchichas. And I'm like, Mom, I can get that here. But she would always like send me stuff that reminded me of home. I got very famous because I kept doing coquito.
Ay, qué rico.
And you cannot get coquito in Denver. So a lot of people would be like, we want to get your coquito. And it was good. It was an amazing experience. I learned a lot about different cultures. A lot of assumptions that we have.
About?
For example, for me, I never thought of meeting people that didn't know how to write or read. I never thought about meeting kids that didn't have a home, that they would live in motels or shelters with their parents. The whole issue with homelessness here in Puerto Rico, there's a drug issue. There's some other issues going around. While there, it's more about like this person cannot pay their medical bills, so they're out in the streets. A lot of people living in their cars. People that
right, but
work.
that's the same population that when provided a service like a library will utilize it. Because it is a public library for everyone.
And one of the things that I would do over summer with my patrons in the library, I would do this, I don't know how to say it in English, pero recogida de...
A collection, gathering?
Gathering of articles for winter. Okay. And I would go with some other librarian friends to people that were living literally in a camping tent over winter, give them scarves. And I would prepare these book bags with a book. Usually, I always try to get like a positive kind of book.
A care package for the mind.
Yeah. So most of were books that were going to get thrown out. So I would check if it's in good condition, then I'll put it in that bag. I'll do like scarf, a lot of socks, and just giving them away to people in need. So our library had many programs that were not book related at all. It was about like providing a service and a sense of community to the people that live nearby. I was fortunate to be able to translate a lot of the library documentation to Spanish, so other people would learn about the services in the library. Because I saw in the beginning the whole thing about how we as Latinos look for information. I knew that people wouldn't think about going into a library, like Latino people in the States. So I would be like in the streets, in different, I work a lot with the Mexican consulate to be like, did you know that in the library there's English conversational classes for
Right.
free?
Wow.
We have this program to teach you about the immigration process for the citizenship test, all for free. And that part was amazing. It was amazing. So I guess when I came back,
So you became aware that libraries can be so much more
oh yes,
than just a depository of books.
yes, and I felt like it validated me a lot, thinking of how I used that school library when I was a kid. I knew it. I knew it that I could, libraries could be so much more. I also remember one time going back, and I thought the librarians there were going to kill me. But in the Lázaro library in the UPR, one of the things that I did during a Christmas break, it was that I had a jazz band played in our library. I was doing this as a student, not as a professional librarian yet. But I was like, you know what? We want to promote our program and librarianship. Let's have some music.
Bring
Let's
the people
have some
in.
stuff. People love free stuff. They do. I remember that the other librarians were like, oh my God, like you actually got people in here. Yes, gold, check. So I guess that for me, libraries are so much more. And they keep evolving so much. And when I came back to Puerto Rico, that was my north. It was like, I'm going to see how I can change the perception of librarians and libraries itself. Because another thing is like, we have this notion of what librarians look like because of how they put them in the movies. Like, we're grumpy. We are like introverts. We like everything to be quiet and organized. And I've met so many librarians during the past years, and we all have different personalities, And the less that I've met are introverts. Mostly librarians that are like more quiet, those are catalogers. They're more like in the technical side, because there are many sites in libraries.
Right.
You can be a cataloger. You can work in acquisitions only. You can be a programming librarian. School librarian. So there are many aspects. And I think that that's one of the things that I learned when I moved, other than studying it. It was more about, okay, let's get into practice, and this is how it looks.
So how do you feel that libraries have adapted throughout this period of pandemic and other external challenges?
One of the things that amazed me during the pandemic about many libraries in Puerto Rico was that they closed. And in the States, there was a whole different movement. Libraries were closed physically, but they kept providing services. So people would do all the reservations online. You would go pick up your book, social distancing, cool.
And I believe our elementary school kept
the curbside
pickup, which coincided with the creation of Goodnight Little Hurricanes, because we wanted our younger readers to hear the voices of their teachers and their St. John's community people.
Yes, and a lot of librarians were doing read-alouds in Facebook Lives.
Right.
So seeing here, outside of St. John's, a lot of libraries closed, like school libraries closed, and their librarians were put into new positions as teachers. That happened in many libraries in schools in Puerto Rico. And for me, so I came back in January 2020, and in March we were out of here. And I was like, no, I have to create something. I cannot stay home doing nothing because I'm going to get crazy. Also, I'm adapting from moving back to Puerto Rico, from living in the States. For me, at least, it was an opportunity to do something new. I created the website for the library that didn't exist before. I kept doing open mics virtually. We kept celebrating banned books week. We even had a virtual author talk with Yolanda Arroyo Pizarro.
We also did an audiobook to that.
Yeah. And parents would even like join our sessions. So I guess like many of us try to do what we could, you know?
So it was a crisis in one side, but also an opportunity.
And I know that many academic libraries were providing front information on COVID. Because there were a lot of fake news happening around when COVID started. Librarians did a good job on like, okay, let's try and, try to give facts. Try to provide information on where to find reliable
credible
information.
sources.
Yeah. So I do feel like we're very creative. And that's why I believe a lot in this profession. Like, because there's so much that we can do. There's a lot. And I think during the pandemic, seeing what states were doing, they kept providing services, even during hurricanes. Right now, I'm working with the Mayagüez Children's Library on opening. So people that still do not have access to internet or electricity in Mayagüez can at least go to that place. And yeah, I feel like we're always like in that front line trying to
ameliorate the punches. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because you are actually moving on to a new position in a new place, but according to everything that you've told us, you're moving toward your dream of working in a more community-based situation. So tell us a little bit about that, but also tell us what is the legacy that you have left us with that we can continue.
I'm very excited about my new position because I've been looking into working with all ages. In the past, I've always had this really good rapport with young adults specifically. But there's other programs that I like to do that are more like children-oriented, or things like the computer classes that are more for the elderly. Now I'm going to be able to direct the whole team into precisely like doing that. So for me, it's a huge step. I'm nervous, but more than nervous, I'm very, very excited. It will let me do more like programming and more like community building. Being a school librarian, it's definitely another thing. I do a lot of community building here, but also because this is an academic environment, I am required to do like my workshops on like plagiarism, research and stuff like that. So moving outside of that, I guess it's going to be more fun, if we want to say that. I enjoy all parts of librarianship, but the most that I enjoy is connecting with people. And now being able to connect with all ages, I think it's going to be amazing. And having a team to do that. Yeah. So that's going to be great. In terms of my legacy, during my first years in St. John's, one of the things that I noticed in this library was that we didn't have a lot of graphic novels. And I feel like that was my first baby project. I had to do a lot of convincing with the teachers because they did not recognize a manga or comics or graphic novels as literature. Nowadays, you have the Communist Manifest, all of these nonfiction books, the Capital in graphic novels. Because we've seen
different histories and
a lot
inventors,
of
all kinds
Martin
of things.
Luther King books are now shifting to graphic novels. And I guess that goes along with how education is shifting. We need to recognize that there's a very diverse learning types in our kids, right? And kids are becoming more visual. Recently, I was researching that kids are becoming more audio oriented. Therefore, the whole creation of audiobooks, now they're super popular.
Yeah, or podcast and conversations
but before,
like the one we're having now.
Yeah. But before I would get this teacher saying no, reliable sources, print books. And I'm like, but there's so much other reliable sources.
Right.
Now you have a lot of recognized organizations having podcasts, and podcasts are information. and there are ways to cite them. So for me, the whole proposal of the graphic novel collection was like, we need to give the kids what they want. If they want to learn visually, let's see how that goes and let's guide them.
Well, I think it's not a matter of eliminated printed books, because I don't think they will ever go out of fashion. I mean,
I don't know.
But I'm saying the process of writing stories and sharing them, whether they're in a book, whether they're in a podcast, whether they're in a film, that will never pass, because that's stories are, right, and information. We have to find a place how to share them. So give us your last thoughts on being here at St. John's and now moving on, and then I'm going to ask you to respond to certain words.
Like in terms of legacy now, thinking about the graphic novel collection and having the opportunity to build a collection with the students has been great. And I would suggest this to any teacher, any educator that is working with teenagers. Let them be part of the conversation, hear them out. These kids have access to technology and information more advanced than what we got when we were growing up. Again, we are here for them. And it's important to let them feel part of it, part of the educational process. Let the kids be part of the conversation.
Okay. So your response to the word books.
Fantasy.
Your response to the word students.
Relationships.
Libraries.
Community.
Puerto Rico.
Home.
Sylmarí, it has been a pleasure working with you. I've collaborated with you since the very beginning when I was doing the oral histories back in 2015 when you were still here, and now as a collaborator with our radio station. So I wish you the very, very, very best, and I hope that we never lose that connection.
Thank you so
And I think
much.
we have something in common. Community.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And that's it for The Cult of Pedagogy.